Alhamdulillah. One of Dr. Sulayman's students, Dr. Latif Tarik. Alhamdulillah. All right, next we're going to have another student, Dr. Muhammad Abdur-Rahim Fraser.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah kareem. So, you know, for me, I want to read something to you all, an article I wrote last year with George Mason University in their online journal article called Maidan. And I think it's appropriate to go through it. I won't read all of it, but just to give you capture the essence of my view and my journey getting to know Dr. Yang. So if you allow me to indulge, I'll do that and then have perhaps some commentary that I think may be very timely. The title of the piece is called Dr. Sulayman Nyang, Dean of Islamic Thought in America and Intellectual. I begin with this with a quote from the late, and I characterize him as the 21st century Islamic intellectual Imam Muhammad, who says, quote, "Respect logic and use it as a tool to improve upon your spiritual understanding." For those who have never heard the name, Dr. Sulayman Nyang is one of the most influential American Muslim academics who has been a pioneer in developing and adding to the understanding of Islam in the United States, Africa, and the broader Middle East. Perhaps no other figure in the tradition of the Pakistani-American academic Fraser Abdur-Rahim has been able to transcend the role of academic professor, public intellectual, and the sage qualities of time-honored tradition of Islamic teachers, all while being a genuine and down-to-earth human being. I first met Dr. Sulayman Nyang as an 8-year-old in my hometown of Charleston, South Carolina, where I grew up, and we stayed in touch as pen pals up until I was ready to go to college. I will never forget the moment when I first heard Dr. Sulayman Nyang. I was at the Moja Arts Festival in Charleston, an annual Black cultural arts festival to celebrate African American history, and specifically the Gullah Geechee tradition, descendants of enslaved Africans in the Sea Islands of South Carolina and Georgia, and who have distinct cultural linguistic practices still kept intact. The invited guests, co-hosted by the city of Charleston and the oldest mosque of the city, Masjid al-Jami al-Rashid, established by descendants of enslaved African Muslims, sought to bring the preeminent expert of Islam in America and Africa to the Low Country, the affectionate title given to the lowland areas in the American South. It was during this time that I was first introduced to a man who was able to quickly navigate between quoting Alexis de Tocqueville, Charles Dickens, Thoreau, Ghazali, Thomas Jefferson, to name a few, and very classical technical Arabic religious texts, all while adding humor and making highly complex topics practical for both the intellectual and ordinary citizen. In short, I was in awe, and little did I know this impression would shape me in more ways than one. It was during this time of my formative years growing up that individuals like Dr. Yang helped shape my intellectual consciousness, like so many others have heard around the world having similar experiences. After finishing undergraduate studies and preparing for graduate school with my interest in Islamic and Africana studies, it was not Harvard, Yale, Oxford, or Cambridge as the leading contenders or strong options for me to attend, but instead Howard under the tutelage of Dr. Yang. Like so many others, I decided to study with the de facto, as I called him, Sheikh al-Islam of Islamic and African Studies, and to find the deep meaning of life, purpose, and at the same time receiving a proper academic training in my doctoral studies. I and countless others are no exception in deciding that we would devote our attention and all our personal and academic time meeting with Dr. Yang at coffee shops, in hotels, at his home, or wherever he was. In fact, we were, and still are, in fact, disciples of Dr. Yang. Work and intellectual legacy, in which we see the huge shoes to fill and to carry out his legacy, and as he recovers from yet another illness. What Dr. Yang means in his humility, his almost photographic memory and kindness is in fact the extension of a father, friend, and teacher. Dr. Sulayman Nyang has worked at Howard University in Washington, D.C. until 2 years ago, which he retired from professor at Howard, and former chairman of the African Studies Department. He joined the faculty of the department at Howard shortly after attaining his PhD in government in 1974 from the University of Virginia, and had a long career including a stint as a diplomat in Saudi Arabia, representing the Gambia. Originally from the Republic of the Gambia of West Africa, Dr. Yang's career in academia, local, national, and international service, and activism spans well over 37 years. At Howard, he has been responsible for designing, developing, and teaching courses on various topics in Africana and diasporic studies, particularly Islam, politics, and philosophy. He has mentored and supervised the work of more than 250 graduate students and many other undergraduates, both at Howard and other institutions of higher learning outside the United States. His numerous publications on Islamic thought, African Islam, African American Islam, African political affairs, along with Middle Eastern and international affairs and topics, has made him one of the formidable experts in the area of expertise, both domestically and international. This role as a scholar also includes 11 books and more than 70 articles and monographs, such as Islam in the United States of America, as our brother mentioned, A Line in the Sand, Saudi Arabia's Role in the Gulf War, co-authored with Evan Hendricks, Religious Plurality in Africa, Essays in Honor of John Mbiti, co-authored with Jacob Alupna, Islam, Its Relevance Today, co-edited with Henry Thompson, Islam, Christianity, and African Identity, Reflections of the Human Condition, Ali Mazrui, The Man and His Works. Since 2001, Dr. Yang has been a regular contributor to Washington Post On Faith, online forum where he has written many articles and think and opinion pieces. One of the most significant piece entitled What Near Death Taught Me About Life, a reflection on his miraculously recovered from a serious cardiac arrest on May 31st, 2004. In addition, Dr. Yang has served on numerous boards, including right here, throughout the U.S. and the world, and provided expert accounts to institutions, courts, multinational organizations. One of the most exciting contributions that I know, obviously, was when I mentioned the American Islamic Heritage Museum in Washington, D.C. This museum is the only museum of its kind in the nation's capital that preserves and archives the history of American Muslims since the inception of the Republic. The museum catalogs the diverse ethnic, ideological, and cultural milieu that represents the American Muslim identity. This contribution also builds on Dr. Yang's close relationship, particularly with the African American Muslim community, in which he has closely been one of the leading experts in documenting the accounts of African American Islam, starting with numerous articles and interviews conducted with living and deceased members. Dr. Yang had close relationships with various Sunni, Shi'i, Sufi, and other ideological African American Islamic groups, and has documented their stories and successes. Perhaps without the role of Dr. Yang's engagement on their stories, including the late Elijah Muhammad, Imam Mufti Muhammad, and other early African American Islamic leaders, their stories might not have been documented and shared with the broader American Muslim community, including Arab and Southeast Asian Muslim leadership who have benefited from the legacy of the African American Islamic experience. To say Dr. Yang has been the champion of the African American Islamic experience is an understatement. And up until recently, before he became ill, he was a regular staple of the annual conventions of African American Islamic communities. Dr. Yang, on numerous occasions, told his students, in formal and informal settings, that stories are critical, must be preserved, so as to document the important contributions in the time they are living. In his words, quote, "We must always move from being footnotes and move to the main text." This mantra, oftentimes used by Dr. Yang, is one of the most famous things that any of the students of his would be familiar with, and important statements of his encouragement for preserving the African American Islamic experience and other stories in history. Most recently, and as you may have heard, obviously, that he was sick and he received, suffered a stroke back in June 2016. One of the many over the years, but in no way diminishing his continued resolve, and yet again he is rebounding and recovering strong, showing signs of amazing progress despite all odds, and truly having faith in the transcendental other, as he would call it, for giving him countless blessings and being the greatest movie maker of us all. I'll stop on that particular because it goes on, and I sort of capture that. But I think really what Dr. Yang represents and what he has laid down with individuals like Dr. Tarik, myself, is this desire to really remake the world, to really see the connections, the intersectionality of ideas, of human expression and meaning and purpose. Without Dr. Yang's personal time and commitment, I would not be doing what I would be doing at this moment at all. And so I am tremendously indebted toward the work and contribution of Dr. Yang. We hope that he has a speedy recovery. I'll stop there because I think it's a good opportunity when we have a dialogue and to exchange rather than just staying up here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. I want to thank you, Brother Muhammad, for reminding me of one of Dr. Sulayman Nyang's famous comments about us being a movie.
Yes.
And we're just the observers within this movie. And also about being a footnote. And we have to become the text of the story. So without further ado, we'll bring Dr. Zahid Bukhari. I think we're going to hear a different slant of the influence of Dr. Sulayman Nyang. I know a lot of times we want to own him, but he's multicultural. Dr. Bukhari.
Thank you very much, Brother Amir, for inviting here and listening. It's so wonderful experience. So maybe I will be repeating it. So first of all, I used to say Nyang Sahib in Pakistani style when you show respect to your elder brother and elder. So now always the word Sahib will be included. So I always, even when I write to his wife, so I just in my habit, how's Nyang Sahib doing in some I knew him in 90s, but I think came to know him personally in 99 when Professor Sulayman Nyang, Dr. Mumtaz Ahmad, is one of the wonderful friends, and Professor Danis Zito and myself, we got together for Project Maps, Muslims in American Public Square in Georgetown University, way before September 11. And we got a grant from two charitable trusts for 1.2 million to study under their big umbrella of religion and the American Public Square. So they gave 7 grants. So one of the grant was given to Muslims, and I was the executive director, and Nyang Sahib and Mumtaz Sahib, they are the main, and then because we were in Georgetown University, so Professor Danis Zito and Center was there. Although when we were working on the grant, so few people asked us that we guys like to do in Harvard University, they were perfectly fine. But then Nyang Sahib decided, no, Howard University, the university will have a lot of cuts on that. So it's better to be in Georgetown University with Professor Danis Zito. So we worked together since then, worked on Project Maps, published edited volume. 3-4 years, I think we did several focus group, workshops in all over the different cities all over the country, national conference. We did 2 surveys with Zogby International. The first 2 American Muslim polls, we did it through Project Maps with the Zogby, and the results were published, and then we published a volume also, a national conference. Then we together work on American Muslims studies program in Georgetown University. We tried, it was not successful, tried to have some grants from the Muslims, big Muslims, very rich Muslims here, but it did not work out, but we worked some time over there. We organized conferences, for example, Muslims giving in America, 21st century American mosques. We organized those conferences with Nyang Sahib, always working with him, learning from him, and Dr. Mumtaz and John Esposito. Then we established a little virtual, you can say, think as Center for Islam and Public Policy, sipusa.com. and we had a project with IIIT. And we work on that, Dr. Mumtaz, Professor Nyang, myself, State of Islamic Studies in American University. So IIIT published that book, State of Islamic Studies in American University. So then we also work like, this is not only in ICNR Council for Social Justice and MACPAC and IIIT, all those, but intellectually on these project maps, American Muslim Studies Program and Center for Islam and Public Policy. That website is still there, although personally I felt so much since March, I think that's the month of March in 2016. Why I remember that middle of March when Nyang Sahib got this stroke. And then 15 days later, on my birthday, March 30th, Dr. Mumtaz died in Pakistan. And I saw him, they were together since the monthly magazine of Arabia, and I think maybe in 80s and 90s they were together here, writing together columns and articles, working with IIIT, working with all this Journal of Islamic Social Sciences. They got together huge.